Okay, directors, we're just going live. Okay, good morning, members of the committee and staff, as well as members of the public. My name is Jake Martins. I'm the General Manager of Corporate Services, and I'm pleased to call this inaugural meeting of the Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee to order for February the 6th. As required by the procedure bylaw, the first meeting of the year is where we conduct the elections for the chair and vice chair for all of our committees, commissions. And so that also falls into play for our Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee, even though there are only two directors with a somewhat unique committee structure. So I'll start just by recognizing that we're conducting this meeting today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, and acknowledge that in the room here today is Director Rice from Electoral Area D and Director Grieve from Electoral Area C, as well as joining us is Chair Wilco Hamilton. Directors, in terms of the election itself, fairly straightforward process. I think we've been through it a few times now as well. So unless there's any questions in regards to the process, I will seek to start it by just calling for nominations for the position of chair. Are there any questions before we begin? Everybody looks okay. Great. So I will invite nominations for the position of chair and Director Rice. I'll just, there you are.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Director Greaves.
Thank you. And I will call a second time for any further nominations for the position of chair. And a third and final time. So hearing no further nominations, Director Grieve, do you allow your name to stand? Thank you. He's confirmed in the affirmative. So I'm pleased to announce you as chair for the committee for 2024. And before we move just further, we'll also just conduct the election for the vice chair position as well, which by de facto is Rice. Thank you. Acknowledging that Director Grieve has nominated Director Rice for vice chair. Calling a second and third time. Hearing no others. Director Rice, you allow your name to stand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm pleased to announce you as vice chair for 2024. Thank you very much, directors. And with that, I will turn matters over to Chair Grieve to preside over the meeting.
Thank you very much, Jake. This is the electoral area function. We call it the Black Creek Oyster Bay service. It's kind of a combination of both Strathcona and Comox Valley Regional District. We kind of overlap. Very interesting dynamics because there's only two members. So either we agree or we don't. Either it happens or it does not. So it definitely promotes a lot of cooperation and give and take. I guess we're going to start off this meeting asking the CAO to give us a summary of the public input received to date regarding the proposed financial plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the committee. Welcome to the financial planning process for the Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee. The CVRD board has had a couple of sessions already to talk about the overall strategic planning process. As well, yesterday, the CVRD board looked at each of the core services and several individual budgets that are under the responsibility of the board. Of course, today is about the couple of services that are under the responsibility of the Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee. And so we have staff here. You'll see some presentation material on that. As well, Lucy Wacharik, our Chief Financial Officer, will be able to provide an overview of the process and set this committee up for this this morning session and talk about some of the next steps as well. And also Lucy, I think, is able to provide an update on the public feedback that we've received to date. We have several different ways that we do reach out to the public and look for feedback. And I'll just turn the microphone over to Lucy to provide us with that update on the public feedback.
Thank you.
Welcome, Lucy.
Good morning, committee. Through the CAO to the chair. So starting with our public input, the status of the public input hasn't changed since yesterday. We've received two pieces of feedback, and for the benefit of Director Rice, We have shifted public engagement slightly for this year, where we're actually using the engage portion of the CVRD website. So if you haven't visited that area, you're welcome to. We've tried to make it easier for the public to actually get to all of the financial information that's there by core service. And the first section of this area has the spot where people can ask questions. So of course, anyone can ask questions out of your area as well, or provide feedback. So far we have had 2 pieces of feedback. Both of them are unrelated to the services that are in your area and relate to recreation services, and also and the second piece of feedback was asking that prioritization come to social housing. So if you want to read the pieces of input coming from those 2 citizens, you can just come out here to the website to take a look at that. And we don't have anything else yet, but as we keep going through the process, maybe. And that's all I have for that particular agenda item.
Thank you very much. And Mark Rutten, General Manager of Engineering Services, is to present an overview of the water supply core service. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, actually, before Mark gets going on, Mark, welcome to the stage. But before Mark gets going, I think Lucy's got a bit of an overview on the process itself, and then
Sorry, okay.
And then we'll go into the budgets.
Well, you're still on the air, dear.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And super quickly, yesterday at the CVRD board, I gave a more extensive overview on how we're going to walk through these budgets with 2 very specific areas here for this committee. It's not as, it won't be as long, but just want to make sure that Director Rice is grounded on how we're going to do this. Generally speaking, we've been going through things service by core service. And at the beginning of each service, we have an overview. For example, for number 2, our water supply core service, and our GM, Mark Rutten, will give a bit of an overview of that for you first. And then we'll move into each of the individual services that are the responsibility of this committee. So we have 1 here in water and 1 here for our emergency management service for Black Creek, Oyster Bay. We will, before we move on to the next service, just was also bringing awareness to the fact that the committee will be asked to endorse the proposed budget. So we'll deal with resolutions before we move to the next service. And if there's additional information that's needed, we in the room staff, we will try to get you any additional information that you may need as quickly as possible. And if we need to have other information or follow-up done, we also do have the meeting on February 26th. If it's needed, we'll come back then as well. So that was the extent of the overview I was going to provide, unless there's anything else that you wish explained at all. Good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, without any further ado, I'll give it over to the CAO for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mark Rutten, our General Manager of Engineering Services, is going to present this overview on the core service that is water supply. A brief overview. More was delved into yesterday, but certainly for the sake of this committee, we'll have that overview, and then we'll move into the individual services. So, Mark.
Great, thanks, James. Yeah, I just have a couple of points that I want to touch on around core water service, and then I'll turn it over to Chris and his team to present the budget. Each day, the CVRD provides clean treated water to thousands of residents across the Comox Valley, and also to a small part of the Strathcona Regional District as part of this service. Our water services are focused on providing clean, high quality water, resilient, reliable, and affordable to residents, all while protecting the environment and working closely with Comox First Nation. There's a lot going on within the CVRD's water services, with major initiatives in all services, including some important projects in Black Creek, Oyster Bay. Each of our water services is involved in doing whatever they can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and Chris will touch on that. And as with many other infrastructure services, water services are challenged by higher costs and assets that are near the end of their life cycle. And proper asset management is key to the success of these services. I'll now turn it over to Chris and his team to present the detailed budget for Black Creek Oyster Bay.
Welcome, Chris.
Okay, thank you, James, and through the chair. Good morning, everyone. So working closely with finance, Mike and I prepared a presentation to help walk us through the financial plan for the proposed financial plan for the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Service. Yeah, as our manager of water services, Mike leads a crew of 17 water distribution and water treatment operators that manage the 6 CVRD owned and operated water services. And they operate out of the still recently completed Comox Valley Water Treatment Plant. As our northernmost water service, the BCOB water service straddles the Oyster River, providing water service to approximately 700 homes south of the Oyster in the CVRD and 300 homes north of the Oyster in the SRD. So I'm going to I'll hand you over to Mike to give us an overview of 2023 accomplishments and looking ahead to the year ahead. With the mic, please, Chair. Mike for Mike. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Morning. So I will just go over a few of the accomplishments that we've seen in 2023, and then just discuss some of our work plan for 2024, as Chris said. One of the most significant ones for well, cost and also safety is the completion of the chlorine gas conversion. Basically, we had chlorine cylinders in that site, and that was the way we disinfected the water. And we went through a process of converting it to a hypochlorite injection system, which is a dilute. It's basically a 12% bleach, so that carries the disinfectant required. And getting rid of the gas really makes the whole process a lot safer for operators, as well as this being situated right in a park where there's lots of residents walking and throughout that park. So getting that safety concern addressed was paramount. And now, so we've gone through most of a year of operation with the sodium hypochlorite, and we're just kind of fine tuning our set points. But that was quite a success. A residential meter replacement program, we're still churning through that. We're finding now with the costs increase, they have increased a little bit on the meter infrastructure. So we're getting not quite as many meters as we used to get for the same amount of money, but we're making our way. We'll have at the end of this year, we'll have a really good count on exactly how many meters we have left for the last year or two of the program. We were able to lift this connection suspension because we have made significant headway on our well project, on our well 6 project. Getting that moving was critical to the water security of the system. And as with our other systems, we're utilizing CityWorks, which is our computer maintenance management system. And really that's taking a lot of operator hours to try and get those inputs put in. So we're taking all of our planning, our work orders, our service requests, and our preventative maintenance plans that have been historically done on on paper, on Excel spreadsheets, on various forms, and we're getting them all into this one centralized system. And we've started to see the benefits of that just with regards to being able to follow up on certain maintenance tasks and moving forward with new ones. So looking forward to 2024. Oh yeah, that photo was in there. That was just if you go back one, Chris, that's just a picture of the hypochlorite skid, and really a lot less infrastructure that was in there before. So we had a chlorine gas, as I said, in cylinders, and then we had a big scrubber, which is basically if there is a chlorine leak, it would get scrubbed through this caustic piece of infrastructure, and then it would vent out into the atmosphere, but as neutralized chemical. But it's just, there's a lot of things that have to happen right there, so far safer to get rid of it all. So the work plan for 2024, we're completing the construction of the new well, the installation, we're running a pipeline down and tying it into our other raw water pipelines. Continue on with the residential water meter program and the asset replacements and some of the stuff that's happening in that Oyster River treatment building. It's now, I believe it was completed in 2008-9, and so we're getting to where some of the pumps and stuff are needing to be replaced. So this year we're looking at the caustic skid as well as the pH analyzer. Updates to the asset management plan. We keep working through that as we're understanding now with our basically above ground infrastructure. Our vertical assets are all in tip top shape. We've got new reservoirs. We've got new treatment plant and a relatively new treatment plant still. And now we're just kind of fine tuning those underground linear assets, as well as cleaning up piping around wells 1, 2, and 4. So we're doing that with the installation of well 6 as we're bringing that new pipeline down Regent Road and into the existing building, into the chlorination building. We're going to be cleaning up a lot of the old historical piping in the ground there as well. And then this year, Black Creek is pegged for our fire hydrant painting. So we did that last in about, I think it was 2013 or 14, and we went out to a contractor at that time. And this year we're going to be doing it ourselves, and we've come up with a plan for painting those hydrants in an efficient manner. I think we discussed that later, actually. So trends and challenges, opportunities. We're looking at one of the biggest ones is cost of everything, and that's really due to a number just increasing costs, and a lot of it's due to the supply chain issues that was globally felt from the pandemic, and it's lasting on a bit. And mostly those are due to staff shortages. And then, but we're having to find, and we're looking kind of within. We've always prided ourselves on operating our system in a fiscally responsible way, but we're trying to find now. We're actually looking at, we're trying to look outside the box to figure out some new kind of ways to save money, because in systems like these smaller systems, it's just ultra important to do that if we can. So some of the ways we pointed out here, our PRVs, which is our below ground pressure reducer valve chambers. Ultimately now, if they're built new, they get built and constructed above ground in kiosks, but to bring one above ground when it's already underground and in good shape and not ready, not at end of life yet, the cost doesn't make sense to bring it up. So we're trying to figure out how to work safely with those underground chambers. So we the operators mostly drove this and worked on within bringing what we could up to the surface, up to the manhole, just with replumbing down below. And actually the whole thing, it is with our screens and with certain pressure gauges and stuff, got brought up to surface, and actually it got nominated for and we won the Innovation of the Year award at the BC MSA, which is the British Columbia Municipal Safety Association. So we got a nice little trophy for that. It was nice to be recognized, but it also has saved significant time as well as money from going around weekly and having to do confined space entries for the operators. So save time, save money, and also made it safer for the operators because we don't have to go into these chambers weekly anymore. The fire hydrant painting is one thing I mentioned. We've fine-tuned that now in the Comox Valley system. We did that over the last year and a half. We painted all the hydrants in the Comox Valley, and it's the operators again took it upon themselves to build a sandblaster. So we have like a little wet blaster machine on the back of a trailer, and we've kind of worked it now to a very smooth process. And we basically go around, and it costs us just about $8 now a hydrant for parts and pieces. So we have some obviously staff costs on top of that, but we've come into now about under $100 per hydrant with staff included to paint these hydrants. And we did go out for expression of interest, and we had any cost between like $500 and $1,000 per hydrant from contractors. So we're able to do it ourselves. It's good for the operators to get to all those sites, and you know where the infrastructure is in the ground, but it keeps you more on top of it when we do it ourselves, and we're able to save a lot of money. self-rescue planning and training, confined space entry. So this is some of the confined space rules within WorkSafe have changed, making it a little more onerous on us to do these entries. So we've taken it instead of having safety rescue agreements with our partners, our fire departments in Comox and Courtenay and Black Creek and Union Bay. We're trained ourselves now to do our own confined space rescue. So we build that into our planning, and we found that that's actually much more efficient to do that ourselves, as well as constructed a lock block bunker. So this is just material storage. Most places, city and town, most municipalities who have public works departments have always had this themselves, but we haven't had a spot for it. Now we have our Comox Valley Water Treatment Plant. We've constructed some stuff on site up there to be able to store this materials, and we're able to bring our costs down of getting one-off truck loads to deliver to gravel and sand to our job sites. So these are just a couple of the ways that we have moved forward with some of our cost savings measures.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Strategic priorities and initiatives. So these are identified in the as key board priorities. First one being the water rate review, which was completed in 2023, and we'll provide an overview of exactly how that's been incorporated into this financial plan on subsequent slides. But over the next couple of years, we're shifting to implementation of those rate increases, and then keeping in mind the commitment to revisit the review in every 4 years. So the next one would be in 2027. We are shifting with the completion of the water master plan last year, shifting to implementation. So making sure that we're actioning the recommendations that came out of that process. As Mike mentioned on the work plan, we're prioritizing the preventative maintenance, the hydrogen valve exercising. And then finally, the board direction toward the corporate energy and emissions plan implementation for the department. So we have recently completed an audit of our operations, and then we're prioritizing the opportunities that are coming out of that. So this coming year, we'll be shifting to doing feasibility studies of those opportunities, with the aim of seeking grant funding where possible to implement them, and prioritizing their implementation. Human resources. So just starting into the summary of the proposed plan. So no significant difference here anticipated year over year to 24 or 25. A slight increase from the addition of a distribution operator to the crew that'll be split between the 6 water services. So just a reminder that these are projections based on kind of a rolling 3-year average, so of actual time spent recorded between the services. Only time actually spent on the services is billed to each service. So there, year over year, there are sometimes differences between what's projected and what's budgeted, and that's just the difference between the three-year rolling average and what was actually realized by the service that year. So it highlights in terms of expenses. So looking at a 6.2% increase, or 6.8% increase year over year. Some of the kind of pieces that stand out. So an increase in the cost of chemicals and software. Some professional fees for development of a major update to our development cost charges. We're also seeing a significant increase in the contribution to reserve, and this is made possible by the increases in rates that came out of the rate review in 2023. On the revenue side, again, a pretty significant increase projected in large part based on the implementation of the results of the rate review. Just to note also that we will be converting the existing frontage tax to a parcel tax. in 2024. And this is in line with the messaging throughout the rate review process last year. And you'll probably recognize this table. This was one of the key outcome tables from the rate review. So just summarizing how the rates, the user rates and the parcel taxes will be increased over the proposed the horizon of the 5-year plan. So this is directly consistent with all the consultation late last fall. And then looking at the latter 4 years of the plan, so the earlier slide was focused on year over year. But other than continued and significant increases to the reserve contributions, otherwise we're forecasting fairly steady spending. But yeah, if you draw your eyes to the fourth from bottom row there, the transfer to reserve. So it was a significant increase year over year to 24. But looking out over the rest of the 5-year plan, our reserve contributions are escalating significantly, which is where we need to be to help us meet the upcoming capital replacement needs of the service, which I'll kind of show you a graph on a subsequent slide just to give you an idea of the magnitude of what's coming. So yeah, so further to that capital planning. So first of all, an asset management update. So we do have an asset management plan in place for the service, but we continue to upgrade the inventory and update the replacement schedule, which helps us to update the risk and criticality ratings for our infrastructure to help prioritize replacement. We continue our integration with GIS and the CMMS, as Mike mentioned. We're on year 3 of that for the water system and really realizing the benefits of that software. We're also looking out into the future and looking at options for decision support software, so DSS, which is can be seen as a I guess it's a potential software option that could help us translate the data coming or in our asset inventory and coming out of our computerized maintenance management system to help us create dashboards and plan for the future of our infrastructure. And not in 24, but starting in 25, 26, we'll be delivering a condition assessment program so that when we come to 2027 and the next rate review for the service, we'll be armed with detailed condition assessments for our infrastructure to help us really pinpoint the asset replacement years and hopefully buy us a little bit more time, but we'll have our eyes wide open. So looking at the 5-year capital plan, the new water supply is kind of dominating the capital spending for the service. So we anticipate completing that project in 2024 at a total cost of this year of $758,000. Aside from that, in our annual capital projects, which are listed at the bottom, so for a total of 887 this year expected. I might touch on a couple of these. So the caustic pump replacement, the ongoing meter replacements, the pH or acidity analyzer, a spill containment reconfiguration at the treatment plant, UV actuator, and then well cleanup for wells 1, 2, and 4, which are in the Oyster River Nature Park. Just a little more detail about the new water supply, just a bit of an update. So our focus, so in late 22, we built the construction pad that's shown on the left photo. Then we, in later that year in early 23, we actually drilled the new production well and did a pump test on that well, which confirmed the results of our projections from our study work. And then throughout 23, we were focused on permitting and design. So we ended the year with effectively ready issue for tender documents. And we'll be proceeding with procurement early in 24, continuing with our efforts to secure the required permits and water licenses, and hopefully starting construction in spring and finishing in fall. Kind of the critical path piece for this project at the moment is the water license. So there's an extensive review period, which has grown considerably over the last couple of years since we delivered the last well. So there's some uncertainty exactly how long the provincial review will take, but we will definitely have that well ready and waiting for when we receive that water license. And I mentioned just, you know, a graphical illustration earlier of our upcoming capital replacement needs. So this is our asset replacement schedule for the service. And in case you can't see, the peak of those replacements is occurring around 2040, with significant ramping up starting just before 2030. And the way this will roll out is, you know, I mentioned the condition assessment program. We'll be doing detailed condition assessments of all of our infrastructure, and that will help us prioritize. So when you see an asset replacement kind of program spread out like this, it's really, we're hitting the higher priority replacements earlier on, and it's just that it'll kind of peak around 2040, but that's according to our current projections, but we'll be spreading out and kind of getting as much life as we can out of the infrastructure. And those are the pipes that are still in the ground after 2040 and through to 2050. A couple slides here just summarizing our reserves. So we have 3 reserves for this service. So the future expenditure reserve, our facilities reserve, and our development cost charge reserve. So the future expenditure reserve is growing modestly and is pretty much right where we want it, and no forecast withdrawals from this reserve over the 5-year plan. Our facilities reserve, also often referred to as capital reserve in some of the other services, is being used to partially fund the new production well project, and will be growing significantly or quite quickly after that project is complete this year, as we direct some of the increased revenues from our rate review into saving for the future replacements. And finally, the development cost charge reserve. So we will be drawing from this reserve to help complete the new well project this year. So dropping from around $400,000 down to $200,000. And then we're not projecting revenue to this reserve over the 5-year plan, just because there is a lot of uncertainty about the rate of development in the area. But we do expect some, which should help to rebuild that reserve. And as I mentioned earlier, we are planning an update to our DCC bylaw this year, which will increase the rate paid for each unit of growth. And finally, in summary, I think our operations and service delivery really runs the gamut here of all of the key board strategic priorities, from fiscal responsibility in terms of our focus on asset management and fair and sustainable rates. From the environmental perspective, metering our water consumption, minimizing our impact on the Oyster River system. Working very closely with our partners at SRD, both at the staff and elected levels. Continuing to work closely with the Comox First Nation on all projects that overlap with their interests, as well as our First Nation neighbors to the north as well. And then finally, from an accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, making sure that all have equitable access to this essential service. That's all from us, but happy to answer any questions.
That's quite a lot to digest, to say the least. All the talk of chlorine gas sort of sent me back to my formative years working in Port Alice and Gold River pulp mills, when we frequently go running for the Scott Air Pack because somebody let a valve off or something. So I'll let Director Rice mull it over. You have some questions at this point, Director?
Do Chair, thank you very much. I just wanted to get a quick update. I've got a lot of questions, so quick update on the meter replacement. I know that last year there was some issues with cell connectivity and those things. Have those been resolved?
Yeah, there is a couple. There's a few bad cell or poor cell reception areas in that area, but yeah, we have the couple that we had, we were moving the antennas to poles and moving them like not like
Mhm.
telephone poles, but just poles that would go up along the fence posts that would just be a little more in the open. And we seem to have fixed the ones. They're kind of a one-off, and we're trying to deal with them when we get to them. But yeah, we did fix those couple that I think you're speaking of.
And it also sparked my interest because we're rolling out universal water meters in my area for the north end. What has been the increase in the cost of meters?
Just the straight cost of the goods themselves. Like cost, like what is
Yeah.
the number wise? I can't tell you the exact number, but I think it's somewhere between 10 and 15% is what
Okay.
they are. And we're noticing that across the board with all of our water infrastructure, meters and valves and setters and boxes and everything. It's between.
Because I know that we're quite aware that, again, short supplies, increased costs, and we hope that we have enough money to complete our project too. So,
And it's getting them to like ordering them and having them being 4 and 6 months out. So you have to order, in bulk when you can. So, yeah.
correct. I also was quite interested in your fire hydrants. I think it's important that the water departments are taking on that maintenance role. I think that is the most efficient way. Not only that, it does allow you to do a lot of things like, make sure that your GIS information is up to date and gives you a good look at the water pipes themselves and lots of things. So very happy to see that. Out of curiosity, do you know how many hydrants are in Area D?
No, not off the top of my head. We have it, there's I mean, it's around, I mean, it's 30-ish% of what's in the whole Black Creek Oyster
Yep.
Bay system. And I don't have that number for you. Apologize.
And you talk about increased safety coming from the city. I'm well aware of, the issues that staff have working in confined spaces and all of that. So very glad to see that, you're taking those steps to make sure that workers can work safely. The other question that I had was around asset management. I think I've surprised a lot of newly elected directors in that, asset management needs to be really, play a bigger and more important role, particularly when we're looking at strategic planning and being able to implement budgets. So again, I'm always very keen to see that, if we can start planning asset replacement sooner than later. I know that that's probably quite the concept for some that are, elected, but we do have to focus well beyond our 4-year terms. We have to start making good decisions that, we'll see it go out 15 and 20 years. So I'm always keen to hear that asset management is playing a big role so that we can see what those replacements look like. With respects to GIS, I think that is really critical to asset management. I mean, it's pretty nice that we can start putting that information and see exactly where those things are. The only other concern that I had was with the pending water license from the province. I know that you don't anticipate a problem, but is there a deadline date in 2024 where you think that that's going to be done?
The range of review times provided were pretty broad, ranging from less than a year to potentially up to 2 or 3 years. So at this point, we don't know anything more than that. We are moving, we're evidently moving through the stages as kind of outlined to us by the province, including First Nation reviews. I believe the application has now gone out to First Nations that have overlapping territories with the area, and to help to help streamline that process, we did take the proactive step of reaching out to those First Nations first to let them know that we're going through this process and to be expecting a referral from the province.
Right.
So we know that that has gone out to the First Nations. So we are moving through the process. We're hopeful that it's on the shorter end rather than the longer end of that review period.
The only reason I asked the question is that, again, you know, it looks like we're still in the same weather patterns where, you know, come summer, you know, where are we at in terms of water? So I'm just trying to get a sense. The last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this was something that I've mentioned to the SRD that Area D needs to start taking a serious look at, is, you know, the development cost charges. And we don't have really good bylaws in place. So I'm hoping that, you know, with our planning department, we can start implementing more of that in my community. And I'm not sure how that will affect you going forward, but I think it is important that we start recovering costs when we're looking at infrastructure. So just my thoughts. Thank you.
Very much, Director. I've got one question. We're looking at building up our reserves for our capital replacement program. And it's around right now just a little under $1 million a year, it looks like. Is that correct? And then we're going to be pumping it up, I think about 7% a year. My question is, where do those reserves live? Because we're, you know, with inflation, we're facing about a 3.5% inflationary pressure on anything we try to save these days. So what are we doing? Maybe that's a Lucy question.
Sure, I can answer that and through the chair. The dollars that we collect along the way that sit in reserves, we those all go into our investment portfolio. So we'll do our best as we're holding on to those dollars to actually have it earning money as well. And that's just going to help us to the long run, right? That'll just feed into actually growing those funds.
So yeah, we're always between a rock and a hard place because our savings are being eaten away by inflation, and any borrowing you do is at a premium. So whatever we can do to kind of tread water, I guess.
Yeah.
We're going to move it along as quick as we can because we still have fire and we have EASC starting in about a little over half an hour. So we have a recommendation there that the proposed 2024-2028 financial plan function 313 Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Local Service Area be approved. Moved by Director Rice. I'll second it. Is there anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Great. Thank you.
I think we're keeping our head above water here. There's a million water jokes. Sorry, folks. We don't make jokes about fire, though, and that's the next up. We have number 3, which is Emergency Corps Service. Doug DeMarzo, General Manager of Community Services, is going to present an overview of the Emergency Service Corps Service. Doug.
Thank you and good morning. I guess to put it lightly, regional emergency service is becoming more complex with the needs of our community and overlapping jurisdictions. Recently, we can consider the Royal Assent of the Emergency Disaster Management Act and the Fire Safety Act coming into full force. Last year, as part of our fire service review, the Oyster Chief, whom serves part of the Strathcona Regional District, has taken on a lot of new responsibility, to include being the rural fire chief, bringing together a more consistent approach to our CBRD fire departments, as well as allowing them to maintain their identity. Relying on our highly trained rural firefighters and search and rescue groups to be first on the scene at motor vehicle accidents, fires, rescues is something our community has come to expect, and we're great at doing response. At this stage, Lisa, do we have a presentation up our core service? Move along here. We have a number of key success indicators that the board has having us focused on, which includes things like the EOC, support and training, and collaborating with our local partners as well as emergency food preparedness. As we move forward with some initiatives of focus to the Oyster River area and Strathcona area, as we oversee the Mount Washington Hall, we're focused on constructing a new hall at Mount Washington and continue multi-year regional training. We're also very focused on fire smart coordination and continue to implement that program moving forward. Here's a list of some of the trends and challenges we see overall. There's definitely higher support of all vulnerable populations. And as I've mentioned earlier, some changes to emergency management legislation. Overall, the service, which includes all our rural fire departments and our Comox Valley Emergency Management Service, is sitting around $6 million in expenses and not expected to change much throughout the next 4 or 5 years, with the exception, of course, of adding additional new fire halls or renovations to existing ones. Funding sources is largely through taxation. So here's a summary of some of the board priorities and initiatives and strategic drivers. And it's really about looking at maintaining our rural community fire halls and understanding that as we work through emergency services, maintaining those community connections and relying heavily on our volunteers will be the way to having a successful path forward. With that, I'll leave you with any questions.
We have any questions, Director? Finally got you on the time. Okay. Thanks very much. So now we go on to the last act on the bill. We have the Black Creek Oyster Bay Fire Protection Service Function 230. And here to present is Chief Green.
Okay, thank you through the CEO to the chair and the director. The Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Service does, Fire Service does protect both the Comox Valley Regional District and the Strathcona Regional District. As you can see there, that's a map of the fire protection area of the Black Creek Oyster Bay Fire Protection. So in 2023, we responded to 560 calls. That was broken down to 379 in Oyster River, Merville 159, and Mount Washington 22. On top of that, as I'm sure you're well aware, it was a bad fire season provincially. We were able to send 18 firefighters on deployment in Fort St. John for 10 days, Lillooet for 25 days, Adam Lakes for 25 days, and West Kelowna for 10 days. We also renewed our tank accreditation for another 5 years. And the provincial government has a Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant for training and purchasing of equipment, which we were successful in purchasing, I believe, $29,000 of equipment to upgrade our current status. With everything, there's definitely increased price of supplies that we're facing, as well as supply chain issues. An example is not for us, but is a fire truck that used to take a year is now taking 2 to 3 years to get delivery. So we're having to plan them well in advance. Our call volume is increasing. And in the Black Creek Oyster Bay area, especially along the beach, there's several close developments in the area that are going to have an effect on our response capabilities and budget. And then we are opportunities. The CRI grant is helping us with Fire Smart and our neighbors, and the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund is something we're ongoing applying for, where I think we're successful in another $30,000 this year. Strategic priorities is the main one that we're following right now is the fire service review that was completed last year. And there was, I believe, 30 or 40 findings in that. And we're working through those findings to implement them as applicable. There's our status. The full-time equivalency is going down a little bit. And I think that's because of what Doug mentioned earlier. There's our funding. It is increasing a little bit. The one I want to talk about here is a new debt for engine 42 replacement. With going back to the challenges with the development, some of those buildings are going higher, which in order to keep insurance in the areas, we have to purchase a ladder truck. So instead of purchasing a ladder truck for $1.8 million, $1.8+ million, we're looking at buying a used ladder truck that we can use for 5 years. And we can probably get one of those for $200,000 to $300,000 every 5 years. So it'll be a good benefit to the taxpayers, I believe, to go that way instead of buying a new one. And the new one can only last 25 years anyway. And then the other part of that for our overall service is Mount Washington, because they're a smaller area, that we can rate that out for another 5 years. So we can use it for 5 years and transfer it or sell it to Mount Washington for another 5 years, keeping the costs down for everybody. Taxation revenue is going to be $906,000 this year. And I think the key to, especially for Director Rice, is the recoveries from other functions. As you're aware, we do provide protection for Merville and Mount Washington, and those recoveries from other function is monies from function 230 or 240 and 237 coming in to offset the cost for us providing that service. And that's just the operation costs. Both those services are total separate capital functions. And the mill rate this year, I believe, is going to be 0.4712. It's up slightly from last year. There's the projections, and that we're holding as steady as we possibly can over the years. There again, with cost inflations and added responses, it's going to be challenging. So the 2024 funds, we're doing an asset management plan for the Oyster River Fire Hall. It is 15 years into its lifespan. So we want to figure out what that's going to look like and help me as a fire chief that doesn't understand building, how we're going to replace those as needing. And then going back to the fire engine, our fire engines to maintain our insurance ratings are only graded for 20 to 25 years. Then you don't get any rating from fire underwriter survey. If we don't have a rated engine, then people will not be able to get a potential reduction on their insurance rates. There's the truck replacement plan moving forward. Long-term capital, 2032, that's we're looking at replacing our front out engine 41, but there again, might change the look at that. Instead of buying a brand new truck, look at buying used ones over time. It might be a lot more efficient for us. And there's the future reserves for where we're at. And the capital works machinery. And so in summary, for fiscal responsibility, we're looking at purchasing a used ladder truck to keep the costs down. The other portion of that, I guess, is when we do go on deployment, we do receive funds from the provincial government to do that. Those funds currently stay with the association, but this year, from the funds, they're putting $100,000 towards purchasing a new vehicle, for a new chief's vehicle, which is going to be an electric vehicle. So we're working with to do the electric as well. And then all the tools that we can get rid of that are gas that we can move over to electric, we're doing that. Community partnerships, we do have a mutual aid agreement with 10 other fire departments to help us when needed. And we also work with community groups and associations when and as requested. For Indigenous relations, we continue to develop the training for our staff. So when we do respond to people, that they understand that respond to an Indigenous person, you might have to treat them differently just for cultural sensitivity. So we're getting that training as much as possible. And diversity, we're continually working on creating an inclusive culture within the fire department. With that, open to any questions.
I'll just jump in really quickly. Last week at the Local Government Leadership Academy in Richmond, we were at the Electoral Area Forum. And of course, a lot of communities in BC are unprotected totally. And the rest are mostly volunteer. But one of the things that one of the firemen, one of the volunteer firemen that's also elected official brought up was that he sees a little bit of a movement with the fire underwriters now to actually recertify some of the trucks. Because he was saying that the pumps, the technology in the pumps is virtually been unchanged. The amount of water you can put on a fire isn't getting exponentially better, and these trucks are lovingly maintained. So apparently there might be a little bit of movement on that 25-year and throw it out thing, which would probably be very welcome.
I've heard that as well. And I know, like I said, on the board for the Fire Chiefs Association of BC, and that is something they're pushing the fire areas to do that, because you're right. It like our main engine, our freight own engine, when it's 25 years old, will have about 35,000 kilometers on it.
I'll buy it. Director, any questions?
Just to expand on that, that might be something that we might want to bring back to the Comox board is, see if we can get a resolution for UBCM on bringing this forward, because I think there is a lot of support in the province about replacement of equipment. And certainly, when we have volunteer fire departments, I mean, the cost of a truck is huge. And I know that, when you start looking at specialized ladder trucks, yes, 1.8 to $2 million is the norm. And that's a lot of money for a small community. So thank you.
I'll say. Okay, well, listen, we have a recommendation that the proposed 2024-2028 financial plan for function 230, Black Creek Oyster Bay Fire Protection Local Service Area be approved. And I'll second it. Is there any opposed? And that carries unanimously. I guess that means there's no new business, no addendum, no media questions. What's the media? I don't know. No in camera, so I'll entertain a motion to terminate.
Move termination.
I'll second that. And we're terminated. Thank you, everybody.